program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel today, everyone. I'm your host, Sarah Higdon. This is Transform to Freedom. So we're back this week. Took last week off. Lots going on though. So obviously, if you subscribe, if you're on my YouTube channel, you know that we weren't completely off. I had a couple episodes of some other shows the last couple weeks, and if you haven't seen them, you can go over to Free the People's YouTube channel or X account. All of those, you can see I did when I was at Freedom Fest, I did an awesome interview with James Lindsay. So that is up there. I posted a video as well. It's just one of the short clips onto my channel here as well. Last week released the episode, an interview I did with Jennifer Say. Great content, great interviews. Loved meeting both of them. But you can find both of those interviews over at Free the People's channel, which is just Free the People, or on all platforms. So go make sure you subscribe to them. As you know, I am the digital marketing manager over there, and so it was cool to kind of put out some content over there, and hope that some of you go over there and subscribe and just enjoy the content that we're doing there. Also putting out some more content here on this channel, with that, just kind of clipping some of those videos down, and so you can see some of the highlights over here. But for the full videos, definitely go check out everything that's over there, because that's the only place that you're going to find them right now. So yeah, it's been a busy couple weeks. So we're going to just, I guess, jump right into some of the stuff we missed while I was out. So we had last week. Well, actually, I should just say, oh, wrong one. First off, before I guess I really get started, is I should just wish everybody a happy 4th of July. I hope you guys had a great holiday weekend. The 4th of July is fun. It was a good weekend for me. Went to a baseball game yesterday, so that was fun. Go Braves! Too bad they lost, but it's always fun getting over to the ballpark. And I guess now this week we got the All-Star game is in town, so just gonna avoid that area of town for a couple days. But yeah. So as we jump into this, we have the first story, which is last week. Hey Jen, how are you? Good to see you. Last week, so the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that parents can opt their kids out of LGBTQ lessons in school. Now this is actually a really big deal, right? Because I've always when I've worked with legislators across the country, I've always kind of talked about how I think that, especially even just sex ed in general, sex ed in what they're teaching should be more of an opt-in system. Parents should know exactly what their kids are learning in school. If they're homeschooled, they're not going to be getting these lessons. So this is good. So when whether it's state law or not, parents are allowed to opt their kids out and not, you know, and take their kids out of school the days that they know that they're learning all of these LGBTQ lessons that really have nothing to do with the foundations of learning. Like I said, I'll always say it. I think that sex ed is a parent's responsibility, and if they want to pass that responsibility off to the schools, then that is on them. But it should be an opt-in system. But the fact that you're now allowing them, now that the Supreme Court has ruled that they can take their kids out and take control of their kids' education, it's an important win, I think. Right? It shouldn't have even had to go to the Supreme Court. It should be fairly common sense, in my opinion, that parents, you know, control their kids' educations. But yeah, Jen, that's right. Yeah, so Jen says, like, my parents had to fill out a field trip permission form just for sex ed, let alone field trip to the zoo. Yeah, like I've always, and see, that's an opt-out system. So even a permission slip, I think, is actually, no, that would be an opt-in system, because they're giving you the option. We're going to teach this at this time. You have to opt your kid into it with a permission slip. Same way. Yes, exactly. I think that that's the way that it should, you know, every school should be set up. You know, a lot of people would say that, you know, the people on different, you know, in the queer theorist and a lot of leftists would say that the average parent just isn't equipped to discuss this stuff with kids, but with their own children, which I say is completely, it's such a elitist mentality that they have, that parents can't give the talk to their kids like they used to. Like, they can't talk to them about sex and sexuality the way that they have for generations upon generations. Only government schools can do that. And honestly, I don't know any teacher who wants to discuss this type of stuff with kids should be looked at a little bit sideways, in my opinion. Like, who wants to go into and teach sex ed to middle schoolers? That it doesn't make sense to me. I think most of the teachers, like when I was in school, like that was like the one thing that they didn't want to teach kids. It was kind of this awkward situation where they were like, I don't want to teach this, but somebody has to because it's required in school curriculum. But nowadays you have teachers that like they get excited about teaching sex ed and stuff to children, which doesn't make sense to me. It does when you, I mean, I guess it does when you start to look at it as to why they might want to do that. But in other words, this is a big win. But yeah, actually, when I was in school, I don't know when like pride stuff started being taught in school, like why these books are being used in school, why, you know, sexuality and all that. Again, I've kind of talked a lot about, like, even if you want sex ed to be taught in schools, you know, it should be more of a health and, I guess, what is it? Biology class. It should be more about like what is happening to your body and what the changes that your body is going through at those times, not necessarily about the act of sex itself. Again, that's what we've always kind of had parents teaching the birds and bees to their kids for millennia. Since the beginning of time, parents have had that responsibilities, and lately they decide to shuck that responsibility onto schools. So again, big win. Another big win. So you guys know I've talked about Lia Thomas since Actually, I just looked it up yesterday. Since December of 2021 was the first video that I made about Lia Thomas on this channel. So I've been on this for a little bit, obviously speaking against males and female sports for a few years now, probably since the beginning of my content. So yeah, 2021, that's quite a while ago. So this week, after pressure from the Trump administration on the University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, the university has stripped Lia Thomas of all the medical all the records and titles that Lia won, and then issued a formal apology to every they issued an apologies to every female competitor who lost out to Lia lost out to Lia in competition. I think this was a big step forward. Obviously, again, it was not because they actually feel remorse or anything like that. It's because they didn't want to lose the money that was coming from the federal government. Basically, the Trump administration reached out to UPenn and said, if you don't do this, we're going to take away all those millions in endowments that we send you, or in grants that we send you every year. UPenn didn't want to do that, so UPenn did this. Now, the one thing that obviously, if we get a Democrat administration coming in next, a lot of what we've seen happen under the Trump administration through executive orders and stuff like that will just be reversed, and we'll be back at square one where we started. So that will remain to be seen how much these universities are like how much the culture has changed to the point where these universities actually feel the need to regulate this stuff in the future. I would hope so, that they will take it upon themselves to not allow this to happen again. I would hope so, again, because 80% of the population agrees that males should not be competing in female sports. But yeah, I think this is a big win for somebody like Paula Scanlon. If you don't know who Paula is, she is was a swimmer on the UPenn team when Lia Thomas was there. She was the one that kind of started, leaking stories, spoke out and said, we're not comfortable with this person in our locker room, but the university has basically told us to shut our mouths. If we don't, then we're going to lose our scholarships, and we're going to be the ones in trouble for speaking out against where we feel uncomfortable. And it was, in a lot of ways, in my interview with Jennifer Say, I mentioned this because it seems like Lia was very much open in the locker room, showing themselves in the locker room, exposing themselves, which to me it seems like the law in terms of that should still remain, that is indecent exposure. Jennifer said, from what Paul kind of talks about, is it could be harassment as well, which that's another thing. And the idea, though, is that this should have never happened in the first place, because Lia should have never been competing in that sport, and so shouldn't have been using the locker room at that time. And if women are uncomfortable and they go to their their seniors at the university, then and they're being they're being they're being labeled as the problem, not the person that's exposing themselves in the locker room, then I think that you have a big issue. And hopefully UPenn is the first of many schools that learns this lesson, that you just you can't have that, right? So, but I obviously still we're in this area where this type of stuff is still happening. We're seeing it still happening across states, in states across the country. Maybe after this year, now that the school year is done, the new school year comes in, maybe this, this was kind of the buffer period that was needed to get all the the trans athletes out of female sports. But we'll see what happens next year. But also there needs to be a change in culture around this issue. We need it. Again, 80% of the population disagrees with it, but you still have, individual sports bodies being allowed to, allowing males to compete in female sports. And mostly because they're private sports bodies, there is no legal recourse that can happen from the government. We shouldn't be looking to government to do that, but it should be so looked down upon that these sports organizations start to get the hint that they shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, Eddie, I think you're right. So what he says, it is still happening, but the fallout, if any, from this has been minimal. This was a tipping their toe in the water, dipping their toes in the water moment. Yeah, I think we'll see. It's gonna remain to be seen how this continues to change, and it's not this. I mean, this fight is far from over, and this is what I've been very clear from the beginning of even this administration, that no matter what you think about like what's going on, there's still a long ways to go with any of these executive orders that have been handed down, because none of them have been passed into law. So we'll see. Now, the sports issue should be, especially when it comes to Title IX, codifying Title IX. We have Title IX already in law, and allowing males to compete in female sports just goes in the face of Title IX. And so we shouldn't have this big issue with at least when it comes to publicly funded schools and universities, athletics. Obviously, private sports organizations have the right to do what they want, but and so that's going to take a change in culture. But at the same time, maybe this is the change that's needed. All right. Moving on, we talked about the one big beautiful bill and all the issues that were in it. We haven't talked about though the Senate version, which changed a lot of the bill. And then once that bill was changed, then it went on to once the bill was changed, then it went on to the House, and then it passed the House with all those changes. And there was some pretty interesting stuff that was added to it at the time. So here's Thomas Massie, which is Elon Musk's new favorite politician, but the public enemy number one for anybody who is MAGA, right? So Thomas Massie pointed out, you were promised the big beautiful bill would do these things, but it does not. It does not prohibit welfare for illegal immigrants. That was one of the big provisions that the Senate took out. Stop funding sex changes for minors. So there was a provision in the House bill that was supposed to prevent Medicaid. It was basically codifying in Trump's executive order into law, which was that Medicare and Medicaid would not pay for gender quote. I'm gonna use their terms, gender affirming care for minors. It was removed in the Senate, so it's interesting because now in states like California, stuff like that, Medicare and Medicaid will pay for those procedures on minors. I guess, again, maybe not until after the Trump administration is out because there is an executive order in place, but this bill funds it. So, the big one that was kind of interesting that was in there was end the registration of suppressors. So suppressors are basically what they would call silencers for firearms. There was a provision in the House bill that said that would have taken it off the ATF registry, to where it basically is a $200 tax to get a suppressor for your firearm, and you have to register it. So like you have to register that you have a suppressor for your firearms through the ATF. That was in the original bill. That was removed in the Senate. Defund Planned Parenthood for 10 years. Now, a lot of people are taking this as a win that it defunds Planned Parenthood. But it defunds Planned Parenthood for 1 year. A single year, which, mark my words, next year they will be sitting on this going, now you want to, they will be, anybody who does not want to pass a massive spending bill next year, they will be saying, you want to fund Planned Parenthood again. It's the same thing that they were doing with the taxes this year, right? So the tax cuts. If you saw the way that they were acting with tax cuts, there really wasn't significant new tax cuts in this law. It was just re-implementing the tax cuts from 2017. But it was really interesting, right? Because they were arguing that a vote against this bill was a vote for increasing your taxes. But then they were also touting it as the largest tax cut in history. But you can't call it a tax cut if those tax cuts have been in place since 2017. It's just re-upping the tax cuts that are already in place. There's no you're not going to see a huge change in your paycheck. Other than we're going to talk a little bit about it in a second, the no tax on tips and the negotiations that happened there as well. It was supposed to implement the REINS Act. Now the REINS Act is something that should be pretty popular amongst conservatives. The REINS Act would before Congress before Congress. Oh no! It basically, the REINS Act, any action that is taken by non-elected bureaucrats, so any of the the three-letter agencies of the government, any act that was taken by them, before it can actually go into effect, it would need to be voted on by Congress. That's what the REINS Act does. It reins in the power that unelected bureaucrats in Washington have. We've seen it, states around the country are passing the same type of stuff to make sure that unelected bureaucrats are not running their state, and the actual representatives are having a say in what they do, so that they can't just arbitrarily change rules. And then reduce the deficit. Obviously, this bill raises the debt limit by $5 trillion. We've talked about it before, how all the cuts come 4 years down the road when Donald Trump is no longer in office. So we're never going to see those cuts. We're just going to see the increased spending that happens in the short term. Eddie says, do you know if they changed the language or made any changes to the AI aspect originally in the bill? I don't know. To be quite honest, I think that they took it out the only reason why I think that they took it out is because Marjorie Taylor Greene, that was her big issue, and she stopped talking about it. So either it still went into effect, or they took it out, and so she was able to vote for it, because that was the one thing that she said she wouldn't vote for it if it was still in. Let me see. I don't know if I have anything about this. Now, what they did, they added this provision too, and Tim Pool's been talking about it quite a bit, because he's a big poker player. But the bill would honestly, if it seems like this provision remained in the bill, and it would it effectively will kill all of Vegas. So Vegas is like Vegas would be pretty much no more. It effectively kills. Yeah, not the hero we want, but the hero we need. Yeah, Marjorie's she can be good when she wants to be. I think that she'll be better when she's not beholden to what Donald Trump is doing, to be quite honest. I think she's better when she's more independent and working with people like Thomas Massey and stuff like that, on these types of things. Now, so this bill there's a provision in there that basically says you can only write off 90% of gambling debts, right? So what this means is every wager that you make in any type of form of gambling, you can only write off 90% of that. So say you make a $10 bet and you lose that $10. Well, technically you can only write off $9 of that loss. So so basically it's saying that you wagered it, and so that $1 is technically profit that you have to pay taxes on. Same thing happens when so say you go in, if you're gambling at a casino, you're playing blackjack and you're playing $10 hands, right? Every hand you play is technically a wager that you can only do. So even if you win, say you play $10 and you win 100, right? Well, you now have to pay taxes on $101 that you wagered, and over the course of say 7 hours, you may be, I mean, if you play 10 hands at $10, you've basically have zero money that you can, like, even if you break even, or even if you lose that $10, you still owe $10 worth in taxes on what you just gambled. That kills a lot. That basically kills again, fantasy sports too. If you wager, say you put $20 in your group, you can only write off $18 of that in your on your taxes. So you are going to have to pay you have to pay $2 at least. You're gonna have to pay taxes on that $2 that you did. So that's one of those provisions that really could kill the gambling industry, because even if you lose, you could owe taxes just based on how much you wager at each time. And it could be very detrimental. Now, we'll see how this plays out. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was in the main bill. Now, again, there is potentially different areas. So say there's provisions in this bill that only last like a year. Trump could technically write an executive order to get rid of those provisions if they start to be really bad. So like the gambling lobby would seemingly want to go to the Trump administration and kill that provision of the bill. And they would probably succeed, because Trump started his entire mogul, career building casinos, and he has a casino in Vegas. He has, casinos in in New Jersey. Like that's where he started, was in casinos. So I would assume that those provisions will be removed. It is really interesting though, like there's provisions that are in this bill that Trump himself had said he hates. He hates I hate green green tax credits in the great big beautiful bill. They're largely a giant scam. I would much prefer that this money be used elsewhere, including reductions. Anywhere would be preferable. Windmills and the rest of this junk are the most expensive and inefficient energy in the world, and it's destroying this beautiful environment and is 10 times more costly than other energy. None of it works. Massive government. Energy should not need subsidies. Also, it's almost exclusively made in China, blah, blah, blah. So Trump's not really a fan of this. And it's really interesting because because as Elon Musk has been, he's Elon Musk decided he was going to start a new political party because of the massive bankruptcy that's happening in the country because of this bill. He formed the American Party, and so now people are trying to figure out what this means. But obviously, yeah, Donald Trump was not too happy with that because, and again, Donald Trump is lying about what he says. He said it's a great bill, but unfortunately for Elon, it eliminates ridiculous EV mandate, which would force everyone to buy an electric vehicle. Elon Musk has said multiple times he wants to get rid of all of it. He wants to get rid of all the subsidies. He doesn't want the subsidies, the electric vehicle subsidies. So, like this whole thing about the EV mandate is just a big lie to try to get people to turn against Elon. I think people can see right through it. Another thing in this bill that I wanted to highlight too, let me see where to go, is Congressman Mike Lawler is representative from New York. Says he is celebrating after months of working closely with my SALT caucus colleagues, we've secured an agreement to raise the SALT cap to $40,000 for 5 years with $500,000 income cap and 1% growth. Maintaining the House passed this language. If you don't know what this, okay, so if you don't know what the SALT deductions are, basically these SALT deductions, they say that you are allowed to write off your state income tax. So your state income tax burden, you're allowed to write that off on your federal income taxes. Basically, it is taking, so Florida and Tennessee don't even have a state income tax, so they don't get any SALT deductions, and they have to pay, people in those states have to actually pay more on their federal income taxes because they don't get these deductions. So basically, fiscally conservative states that don't charge their constituents or their citizenry high state income taxes are subsidizing those who charge a large, like basically subsidizing socialist states like New York and others. So if you pay 10% in state income taxes, your federal tax liability will be lower than somebody who only pays 6 or 0 in the case of Florida or other states. So it's really, it's like, oh yeah, we don't like socialists, but then now we're going to fund socialist states with because people in red states have to pay more in federal income taxes. It's a slap in the face if you live in a fiscally conservative state to where you don't have to pay as much in income taxes. Which I'm glad I actually live in Georgia. We just got our state in Georgia, if you don't know, we run a budget surplus every year, which means that at the end of the year, we get money back. So like we just got money back. Actually, I looked at my bank account today. I got money back today because the state decided to give their, the state has excess funds because they budget better. They came in under budget, so as citizens we get our money back that they overcharged us, which is, I mean, income tax is theft anyways, but at least we get some of our money back when they run a surplus and they actually are fiscally responsible with the money that they steal from us every year. At least they give some of it back instead of trying to spend it on new programs like most places would. So actually, I don't even know how that works because I got some money back. Like, does that come out of these SALT deductions? Like, am I now have to add in this money back because I got for my SALT deductions? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's all a scam. Now, there's also the thing about no tax on tips. So this meme actually gets it pretty well that Austin Peterson put out, which it's the no tax on tips. First of all, the no tax on tips that expires in 2028. So guess what's going to be happening? They're going to be using this as a negotiating tool to get you to vote for a Republican in 2028 because, hey, we can't let these no tax on tips, or actually, never mind. They're going to be negotiating for another big budget bill in 2028 because these are going to expire. Same thing that they did with the 2017 income tax, that they expired this year. And so if you don't vote for these, then you're voting for an increase on tax on tips. You're going to be voting for that. It's the language games that they play, the manipulation tactics, and why these things expire in the first place. But then also the fine print on this no tax on tip stuff, right? First, so the no tax on tip only applies to the first $25,000 that you make on tips. So if you make more than $25,000, it's not going to affect you. And most people that make under $25,000 a year don't pay taxes anyways. They don't pay taxes on their, they don't pay income taxes because they don't make enough to make that initial threshold. Your payroll taxes will still apply on those tips. So you do still have to pay payroll taxes. IRS approved jobs, list only, all that stuff. There's other issues with this too, right? So the, what is it? There was supposed to be no taxes on Social Security. Well, that didn't get passed in the final bill, even though the White House was still trying to claim it did. Also, there was the no tax on overtime. Well, that had a cap of $13,000. So it really wasn't a lot. It was a cap of $13,000. I think that there was a maximum. So I think it was something like, I don't want to throw out the wrong number, but I want to say it was something like just 50,000 a year. I think it might have been a couple $100,000. So if you worked overtime, but you made, over $100,000 a year, then you still had to pay full income tax on your overtime. Don't quote me on that though. It kind of, I don't remember the exact number, but there was a cap, and it's the same with tips. I think that there was a couple $100,000 cap. So if you made over, if you were a high income earner, you still had to pay full taxes on all of your tips. And I think it was only cash tips. I think it was cash tips were the only thing. It was so y'all sending super chats in here doesn't count apparently for tips, which doesn't make sense to me because it's the same thing. But there might have been some discrepancy in that as well. All right. I was going to talk a little bit, but this was an episode for last week. It was New York is looking to, they're looking to elect a socialist in New York. Socialist wins the Democratic primary. And actually, communist wins. He wants to make government-run grocery stores, and he wants to make, seize the means of production in the state. They're trying to say he's not a socialist, but he is a socialist or communist, whatever you want to say. It's right out of the Communist Handbook. But big thing that we came here to talk about is Jeffrey Epstein. Like, nobody's buying this, right? Like, okay, so let's break it down if you're not really paying attention to what's going on with this. Let's take a deep dive. So yesterday, the Department of Justice and the FBI released a memo that said not only did Jeffrey Epstein actually kill himself, but there is no evidence of a client list. So let's just take that sentence in and of itself and see how unlikely this would be, right? If there was no evidence of a client list, then why would Jeffrey Epstein kill himself? If there was no evidence, what would be the point? Like, why would he feel so strongly to do something so drastic if he would probably get off? Right? But there's a lot more to this, obviously, because there's been the, let's just say, miscommunication, or I guess lying from the administration about this. So Connor Boyack lays out the timeline pretty well when it comes to just this administration. Now, before coming into this administration, Dan Bongino was very high on the Epstein, making sure that we were all clued into what was going on with the Epstein list, right? And I mean, I see a lot of people putting this out there. Like, Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison right now, where people would say is in prison right now for apparently human trafficking children to nobody. Like, now, the word of caution that people would say is that Ghislaine Maxwell is actually only in prison. And I guess when I looked up some of the court documents for Ghislaine Maxwell, she's only in prison for procuring women for Jeffrey Epstein to abuse. For Jeffrey, just him. Like, that's what the court documentations for her trial actually say. So she's actually serving time in prison just for trafficking or procuring, abuse victims for Jeffrey Epstein. But Connor lays it out like this. It's pretty well done. So February 21st, Pam Bondi says Epstein files are on her desk and under review as per Trump directive. February 26th, announces files including flight logs and names to be released February 27th. Cites victim privacy for delays. February 27th, the big show, the phase 1 release, the when the influencers were holding up those binders that didn't have anything in them other than information that we already knew. That was the phase 1 files, 200 pages, mostly public, hands binders to influencers, accuses FBI of withholding thousands of documents. Remember, they were like, the FBI in New York has withheld documentation, and we're getting those files now. We've ordered them to deliver them to us so we can review them. So the 28th, demands FBI deliver all Epstein files by 8 a.m. Orders probe into withheld documents. March 2nd, claims FBI misled her, says she now has thousands of pages under review. Official who withheld docs was fired. March 14th, says she received a truckload of unreleased documents, no release timeline given. April 28th, covertly recorded saying FBI reviews tens of thousands of Epstein's videos with children. March 7th or May 7th, publicly states FBI is reviewing tens of thousands of videos, denies files are missing, cites victim protection. And now, July 6th, there's nothing to see. No victims, no clients, none of this. And I guess, we know, I guess Prince Andrew is no longer a client in this case. Interesting. I mean, he got stripped of his titles and everything for what's going on here. But basically, they're saying there's, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't blackmailing anybody. He had a client list. But like, what's changed? This was not too long ago. Remember, this was Pam Bondi a few months ago.
Tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume. And that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going tens of thousands.
So the victims won't be released, but there's tens of thousands of victims. It was just videos with Epstein. Like Epstein was just videotaping himself with these children. No clients. Nobody's buying it. Nobody's buying this. Let me see. What's this one? Okay. What changed here? Alina Hubba, at the time that she said this, she was a special counsel to the president. She's the one that was his defense attorney for the New York case. But here's what she said on Piers Morgan in February.
But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability. But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have.
And Pierce asked the right question. What changed? I thought we had flight logs, so we know whoever visited that island. We should know whoever visited that island, right? We have information. We have names that will come out. And it's incredibly disturbing. Like, something's not adding up here. People are pointing to Elon Musk saying that Donald Trump was in the files. Now, Donald Trump was on the flight logs, which have already been released. So that, again, we're going to say this. What I'm going to say is I don't know. I don't believe that Trump was actually necessarily. I'm going to say I don't really believe that he was implicated in any crimes with Epstein. Just knowing how he like their friendship ended when Epstein was hitting on a young person at Mar-a-Lago. So, but the real question is, there's people on the right, there's people in high places in the conservative circles who I would assume are implicated. I think that there is probably so many people in the corrupt Washington swamp that are implicated in this. You could probably lose half of Congress if what comes out, right? Think about that. I mean, that's just a wild guess. I have nothing to frame that on, but I could say, with all the people surrounded by this, and it's bipartisan. You could literally probably like that could be why they're hiding this. People are saying, I mean, think about if 1% of the world's CEOs are, what is that? Maybe 10% of the CEOs out there are implicated in this, or senior executives at some of these major corporations are implicated in this. That could completely crash the financial market. And that's one of the reasons why people are saying that maybe because of all the names of the people that are out there that are, were involved in this, just the sheer volume of elites that were involved in this, it could cause a ripple effect in the stock market would crash tomorrow. And some people think that's why Donald Trump is looking more towards his legacy, because this could send us into a recession. It could send us into a French Revolution, something like the French Revolution, to be quite honest, when you have the elites that are so powerful all being indicted into this. So maybe that's why they're hiding this, but there's something going on here. I mean, here's Pam Bondi again saying that it's there. Like,
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
DOJ may be releasing the.
So what changed? Yeah, Eddie, that's right. What are the charges if there are no clients? But she said it was on her desk. And now what was on her desk is just a big nothing burger. Nothing to see here. It's just one giant social club and you're not invited. Like we're never going to get transparency about this, and I think this is where they are going to lose a lot of people, especially and then Pam Bondi has not come out to do a press conference. They send the press secretary, who we've talked about before. Her job is to lie. That's all she does, is go out there and cover and lie. But this is what she says.
The DOJ and FBI have now concluded there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. What do you tell MAGA supporters who say they want anyone involved in Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes to be held accountable?
This administration wants anyone who has ever committed a crime to be held accountable. And I would argue this administration has done more to lock up bad guys than certainly the previous administration. And the Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the president's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. And they put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic and it contained child pornography, which is not something that's appropriate for public consumption. But they committed to an exhaustive investigation. That's what they did, and they provided the results of that. That's transparency.
Follow up on that,
Sure.
Caroline. Okay, so the FBI looks at the circumstances surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein. According to the report, this systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network on Fox News. Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars.
It's good spin.
They have an operation going on right now called Summer Heat, which has our murder rate trending in the lowest direction in United States history. Their emphasis on violent crime.
And then she goes in this boast of the FBI and the DOJ, but that's spin, and this is why she's good at her job, though, right? She knows how to say, oh, she wasn't talking about what you think she was talking about. She was actually just talking about the whole file in and of itself, not the client list, which she said that she had. So it's just the cover up that nobody believes this. And then last thing, it's just a really weird, suspicious tweet. I guess maybe not. Donald Trump's trying to commend his team, but right after these files come out, Donald Trump comes out and said, this whole scandal breaks that they're trying to say. And then they released this video of his jail cell, which there's a jump in the video, which is kind of crazy. But it's like, what is this? This doesn't show anything, right? Like you said, if there's no, there was so much child pornography and thousands of victims. How many victims? It doesn't make sense that Jeffrey Epstein was the only perpetrator of thousands of victims. None of that makes sense. None of it. And obviously none of the victims' names are going to come out, because those would be, you don't want to, out, the survivors of these heinous crimes. But I mean, it just something like all this stuff's not adding up, and nobody's believing it. Nobody's believing it, But Donald Trump says the FBI, under the direction of Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino, is back to the basics, locking up criminals and cleaning up America's streets. We have the greatest law enforcement professionals in the world, but politics and corrupt leadership often prevent them from doing their job. That is no longer the case, and now they have been unleashed to do their jobs, and they are making just that. Keep it up. Make America safe again. And unless you're a powerful elite, then you can just do whatever you want. Nobody's buying it. None of this is adding up. Again, Ghislaine Maxwell is just in prison for trafficking to nobody, or just procuring women for Jeffrey Epstein to abuse. Jeffrey Epstein was charged with human trafficking, but to nobody. Go back and look at the charges that he was brought up on. Why was he in prison? Why, if you truly believe that he committed suicide, what was he so afraid of? Why was that? Why? If these charges were not going to stick, then why? Some things don't add up. And then it's just also the same week that Diddy gets basically exonerated from 3 of the human trafficking charges, and was only charged on 2 accounts of, lower level crimes. I forget what the crimes were off the top of my head, but it's like, oh, so now if you're a multimillionaire, one of the elites, things just go away, right? I guess. Well, all right then. that is all we have for today. Thanks for joining today. Remember, if you've made it this far, click that like and subscribe button and follow me across all social media platforms. And I will see you next time.